Well, our first guest this week is joining us direct from Vancouver, BC, Mr. Tyrone Doherty. He's the CEO of Deerhorn Capital Incorporated. In Canada, they're listed at DHC. In the U.S., it's GODYF. Tyrone, welcome to the program.
I appreciate it, Don. Thanks for having me.
Now, Deerhorn Capital describes itself as generating revenue and investor value through mineral discovery, project development, and cooperative access to untapped mineral regions in First Nations territory with sustainable exploration. Can you give us a general overview of the company?
Yeah, we originally have a property. It's a multi-mineral property, a polymetallic property in British Columbia. And I make jokes to everyone all the time that if I wasn't worried about getting sued by Disney, I'd call it Magic Mountain. So we've decided to focus on one small section of the property which contains precious metals, gold and silver, and a unique mineral called tellurium, which we can talk about later on. But where the revenue generation comes from, in addition to that mineral property we're talking about, is that we've come into a comprehensive agreement with a First Nations-led mining company here in British Columbia that as a part of their mandate, they've been approached by an NGO out of Washington, D.C. called Resolve, who have many big partners. And one of their latest programs is a program called Salmon Gold, which they go around and restore salmon habitat from placer mines and reintroduce the fish. And they like the cooperation of our First Nations partners. We were asked to come on. So Deerhorn will generate revenue by finding placer miners that want to get involved in the program throughout Canada. We started off in Yukon last year, but we're going to advance to British Columbia as well as other parts of Yukon and other areas of Canada when we find the time. So that's where the revenue comes in. So we're very fortunate as far as a micro-cap company, junior mining, that while we're advancing our main project, we get revenue that comes in, and we're anticipating that hopefully within a year or so that at the very least it'll pay for all of our expenses at the office. So that's very unique from a junior mining point of view. We don't have to worry about dilution all the time just to pay the bills.
Well, what we're talking about is responsible, environmentally sensitive minerals and gold exploration, aren't we?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the unique combination of it. We get the high value precious metals, the gold and silver, which obviously are doing well lately. But as part of that package with that deposit alone, you also get the tellurium that comes with it. Now, I just want to state to the viewers out there that 95% of our revenue will be coming from the precious metals, but the tellurium is one of the 8th or 9th rarest metals in the world. It's on the same scarcity as platinum, and it's having a big advancement in technology research. It's very big in some of the solar panels, but more importantly, recently, there's been a big push towards battery research for a lithium tellurium battery, and the people behind the batteries think that it could be much better than the lithium-ion battery. And as your viewers may or may not know, the European market has decided about a year ago that they want to start their advanced research on their own battery supply for their huge automotive industries over there, because as of now, they depend entirely on Asia, whether it be China, Japan, or Korea, to supply them with the batteries. And they thought that it certainly makes a lot more sense for them to develop their own source of batteries. And €1 billion was just put into a program about 6 months or so ago. And one of the main pushes is a lithium tellurium battery. And one of our partners is a company called Phoenix Metals out of British Columbia. They are one of only 2 companies in the world that can do ultra high purity minerals at the 7N level, and the 7N stands for 99.9999999% purity. So they're one of only 2, and they contacted us because we are one of the only companies that has a 43101 resource on tellurium, and they like to know they're going to have a supply down the road. So it was very fortuitous, and I'd love to take the credit that I jumped into the property for the tellurium, but it was for the precious metals, and sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. So we're very pleased with that.
Well, we had a fascinating conversation before going on the air whereby you mentioned relationships with huge companies like Apple. Can you elaborate?
Yes, as I mentioned, our First Nations partner, it's 51% First Nations owned and 49% Deerhorn owned, and it's a company called Chiona Metals. And Chiona means in both Tahltan and Casca nations, it means wolf. And they were contacted by the NGO out of Washington, to get involved, if they'd be interested in getting involved in the salmon gold, because there was in Yukon in British Columbia, because there was a pilot project the year before in Alaska, and Resolve Inc. is the company is the NGO out of Washington, and they thought it'd be great to partner with First Nations and help clean up the environment and make some cash for them as well. So the partners in Salmon Gold, as it's been called, trademark, are both Tiffany's and Apple. And so that's very unique for a junior company like ourselves. We worked on it for about 6 or 7 months. These big partners wanted to make sure that they found out, who they were getting involved with in the junior mining sector up in Canada, because no one wants to have embarrassments. And, the mining industry, let's face it, has had a history sometimes of some colorful people, and none of the major corporations like Apple or Tiffany's would want to get involved with people that would bring any type of embarrassment to them. So it took about 6 months to pass their test, and now we've gone on and we introduced our first placer miner in Yukon. And for this year, 2019, and this year we plan on introducing a few more placer miners in Yukon and perhaps British Columbia, and the program should grow rapidly. And like I like to tell my shareholders, because when we put out the news release, people kind of say, well, geez, is it a junior company making a news release about Apple or Tiffany that isn't quite true? So I always go from the point of view is just assume we're not telling the truth. Go and check out for yourself. So there's a link on our website to the actual news release that Apple put out in August, and Tiffany put one out as well talking about salmon gold. So again, sometimes people think it's too good to be true, and so I had that before in a previous company that I managed to sell. It's just a matter of we do things a little bit differently than probably 99% of junior companies out there. We actually build a company going forward and trying to eliminate all the red flags ahead of time. So it's nice to be in bed with those people, but again, we have much bigger fish to fry, no pun intended.
We're almost out of time, but why is this a good time for people to take a closer look at your company?
Well, because we've now decided to start getting some recognition in the United States. We haven't done anything with our U.S. Market listing. I'm right now in the middle of negotiations with a California-based company that is looking to sponsor us going into the States, and also we'll be going on to Frankfurt Exchange as well later on in the year, because now that the story's ready to be told.
Deerhorn Capital Incorporated, listed in Canada, DHC, in the United States, GODYF. Tyrone, great interview. Thanks so much for joining us.
Appreciate it, Don. Thanks for having me.